With the Gorton and Denton by-election looking like it's going down to the wire, all the parties involved have been resorting to pretty desperate measures to court the last remaining undecided voters with just hours left until the polls close. Much digital ink has been spilled over, quite frankly, every party's use of some rather dodgy bar charts already, but the big voter dynamic in this particular by-election is the tactical vote against reform. And the voters certainly aren't sure who might be the correct choice if the people who Luke Trill from the Pollster More in Common spoke to are to be believed. Here are some quotes from recent focus groups. "I'm a bit confused. I don't know who I'm going to vote for. I was sure yesterday, but then I've changed my mind again," says Joe. Amy continues, 100% I am confused at this point. And lastly, Sharif says, "I'm also confused. I don't know whether I'm going to go and vote for someone or not." Given that recent polls have indicated that as much as 30% of respondents are still undecided, this means there's plenty of votes up for grabs. One thing that both of the Greens and Labour have been doing from day one is trying to convince people that they're the only one who can beat reform. The Greens, for example, have had it in their campaign videos that it's a straight fight between them and reform. But when Labour's Chris Curtis tried the same trick on ITV's Peston, he didn't quite get the response that he was hoping for.
That's bad news for Labour MPs, isn't it, being attacked on your progressive flank?
Well, I don't think they're going to win. Well, I was up in Gorton at the weekend, and it was pretty clear that this is a straight fight between us and Reform. And that makes me really nervous, because I have seen...
don't believe that for a second. Come on.
That's not the case.
Come on.
I've seen just how damaging the Reform MPs that we've got in Parliament have been.
Yes, but all the polls that there have been suggest that it's a three-horse race. MPs, including Labour MPs, tell me that it's a three-horse race, and they're most worried that Labour MPs are potentially going to have to face up to a Green challenge, and for the first time in seats like yours, in urban seats, feel the pressure from the Green Party or the Progressive flank they've never felt before. Don't you feel that?
It's really not a laughing matter, because I've seen just how damaging these Reform MPs have been in Parliament.
That's not the point I'm making. The polls all show it's a three-horse.
But it doesn't say it's a straight fight. I'll answer you the polling question in a minute, but I will just say that I'm so scared of a repeat of what we saw in Runcorn. And enough voters going to the Greens that it means that we have another Reform MP causing damage in Parliament. Now, when it comes to the opinion polls, you know as well as I do, and I think we were talking about it just there, Ruth. Opinion polling in constituency, I used to run these polls, is incredibly difficult and not very accurate. When I was there on the ground at the weekend, what I saw were lots of voters coming towards the Labour Party, realising this is one of the safest.
What I love is an ex-senior polling person saying that the polls that are carried out are completely useless, and a bit of anecdotal evidence on the doorstep is somehow more scientific and more valuable. Chris, go away, take a deep breath and come back to me in a minute.
Constituency polls have a historical record of not being particularly
and therefore you banging on a few doors is scientific.
Now, as was pointed out there, Chris may know a thing or two about polling. The Labour MP for Milton Keynes North used to be a political research manager for Premier pollster YouGov. He was given a free run at the seat after the favoured local champion Lauren Townsend was blocked from the shortlist. Trying to claim, as a former pollster, that random doorstep data is somehow more trustworthy than constituency polling, whilst deliberately ignoring the polling data showing the Green Party ahead, quite deservedly was met with laughter from the Peston team. Although maybe he was just looking at a brand new tactical voting group that seems to have appeared out of nowhere. Now, they're called Tactical Choice, who have actually quite bucked the trend of all the other independent tactical voting sites by recommending the Labour Party as the tactical vote rather than the Green Party. Here's the leaflet that's been appearing on the doormats of voters in Gorton and Denton. It shows polling from Britain Predicts, with the Labour Party second to reform by a single point on one side. And on the other side, it recommends a tactical vote for the Labour Party. Obviously, every tactical voting site is well within their own rights to use their own methodology to give recommendations to voters. But it seems odd that this one should be so out of kilter with every other tactical voting recommendation. Now, there's a good reason why, which eagle-eyed viewers might have spotted earlier if they'd looked closely. Let's bring up that first side again, but zoom in at the bottom of the leaflet. There's an imprint at the bottom, meaning it's official party political election material and not a non-partisan recommendation. And it says quite clearly, surprise, surprise, that it's promoted by Anthony Lavelle on behalf of Labour candidate Angeliki Stoyer. So Labour have created a fake tactical voting group and appear to be trying to dupe people into thinking it's real to get them to vote Labour. Although the poll, surely that's legitimate, right? Well, let's zoom in one more time. The source of Britain Predicts appears to refer to the forecast model of Labour councillor Ben Walker for the New Statesman, but it currently says that the Greens are ahead. So as you can see here, Labour have deliberately removed the Green favourable Omnisis poll to get the result that they wanted. Now, Undecided is a non-partisan organisation. Just because one poll was funded by a Green donor doesn't make their polls less accurate or biased towards the Greens. It's not taken long for yet more Labour MPs to embarrass themselves over this fiasco too. Mandelson approved 2024 intake MP Oliver Ryan in response to Owen Jones calling out this subterfuge, still running with the bit. Politics is about compromise. Tactical voting doesn't always favour the party you're fanboying for, but it's the right thing to do. Vote Labour and keep reform out. I'm glad Tactical Choice agree. This is the same Oliver Ryan who was suspended from the Parliamentary Labour Party for 6 months for his participation in the very same Trigger Me Timbers WhatsApp group that led to the resignation that was responsible for this by-election in the first place, where Ryan allegedly mocked another MP's sexuality and joked about Jewish clothing. Luckily, the good people of Twitter's community notes came to the rescue to set the record straight. Tactical Choice is a fictitious voting group apparently invented by Labour during this by-election campaign. 2 real tactical voting organisations have recommended voting Green to stop reform, which, considering how much the Labour Party have been community noted over these last few weeks, it does lend towards the kind of politics that Labour have been engaging in during this election campaign. Although the fun hasn't stopped there. One Twitter user was quick off the draw to play Labour at their own game. They changed their profile to match the fictitious organisation and described themselves as, quote, a completely legitimate tactical voting organisation. And Green Party leader Zach Balansky had the last laugh by registering the domain tactical-choice and redirecting it to the Green Party website. Now, whilst this is all fun and games, it is, in my opinion, very dangerous for democracy that we've had an escalation of dirty tricks to try and win over voters via subterfuge rather than via policy. But Labour's dirty tactics extend to the policy arena as well. Here is Keir Starmer in Prime Minister's Questions, making an unprompted attack on the Green Party's drugs policy.
The Green Party's policy isn't just irresponsible, it's reprehensible. Legalising, Mr. Speaker, cocaine, heroin, ketamine, and the date rape drug, GHB, a drug which we know is used to spike drinks for women. Now, whilst we're making that an offence, the Green Party's proposals would shatter lives, increase antisocial behaviour and see drugs use running rife. And I have to say, as the father of a 17-and-a-half-year-old son, the idea that the argument is being made by the Greens that when he turns 18 in just a few months, it would be lawful to provide him with heroin and crack cocaine is absolutely disgusting.
I think what's disgusting here is you deliberately misrepresenting other people's policy positions. It is about control and regulation whilst legalising these substances, because it's clear from all we've seen about the war on drugs that it has failed. Has the war on drugs led to fewer drug deaths? No. Has it led to fewer people going to the NHS with problems with regards to drug use? No, it hasn't. Has it led to lower crime and gang crime around drug usage? No, it hasn't. All of these things have continually remained constant whilst we've attempted a failed war on drugs. And that is the reason we're in this position where young people, young vulnerable people or poor people get caught up in criminal gangs or get caught up in this trade because of the war on drugs being a total and abject failure. We've seen from Portugal that as soon as they engaged in the kind of policy that the Green Party are advocating for, we saw drug deaths go down. We saw people being admitted to hospital with drug problems go down as they got better and they got healthier. We saw the criminal gangs being far less powerful than they are in this country, or they are indeed in other countries too. And that has been a massively positive result for the people of Portugal, whilst they treated it as a public health issue rather than a criminal issue. And I would also like to say, invoking your own family members to try and curry favour with people in Parliament of all places when you're being disingenuous about somebody else's policy prescriptions is really below the belt. But then again, this seems like this is the Keir Starmer's Labour all over. Is that a reasonable assessment, do you think, Stephen, of the Labour Party under Keir Starmer?
Yeah, I mean, they're a fairly sneaky bunch without much in the way of principle. And I mean, like, you know, Chris Curtis, Oliver Ryan, these members of this 2024 intake are, they're so interesting in many ways because they're kind of like the upside down version of the 29 Tory intake. So there you have like a massive influx of Tory MPs who have like, you may not agree with them, but quite strong ideological principles in many cases and are like rooted in often in their constituencies. Here, you have people who are not rooted in their constituencies at all, just parachuted in, and have like no principles, no ideology, as far as we can tell, except for somehow the Starmer Starmer project. And that means that their fates are so deeply tied to whatever happens to Keir Starmer. So it's really interesting to see like Chris Curtis on Peston, slagging off polling. In 2 years' time, mate, you're going to be out looking for a polling job. Like, you're almost certainly not going to be an MP. This is it. There's no, if Starmer goes, there's no constituency vote which is going to support you should the leadership change, right? There's likely to be other candidates in those constituencies who are going to be much preferred by a new leadership. So yeah, I think that willingness to engage in, just to some extent dishonesty or projecting a kind of fantasy about it's fair to say like by-election polls are not reliable. It's not right to say it's a two-party race. Like you can't say it's a two-party race because I've like knocked on some Labour doors and they've said, oh, they're voting Labour. And then yeah, obviously the tactical choice is just. I mean, it's not a new kind of trick. It's a trick we've seen in other elections before. But to see it defended by an MP, using the name once it's been exposed already that it's actually a fake organisation is crazy. But nothing is surprising here about these kind of tactics. I tweeted this morning about like could Labour actually be the party most kind of community noted in an electoral campaign in like British history, because you've got like Oliver Ryan there, you've had various Labour accounts, you had the Prime Minister community noted over his claims about energy prices, which of course were released yesterday in time for an important by-election, right? So it is related to the by-election. And then revealed to be absolutely nonsensical in terms of what they actually prove. But I will say one thing about the Greens' drug policy. It's like being incredibly frustrating to me to see both Reform and Labour leap on their drugs policy, which is a long-term policy, seeing them being able to do it so easily. And that is partly the Greens' fault that they've been able to do it so easily, because, that 2019 policy is like basically hanging around on a local Green Party website. And it does talk about the legalization of every kind of drug. Of course, that's a kind of long-term goal, and it involves like a regulated marketplace and so on and so forth. But if I were the Greens, what I'd be looking at doing for the next election that they're involved in is really investing in getting good literature about where they stand on these sorts of issues that people can go to their website and use as a resource, simplified, clarified, etc. Because the vacuum of like good information about what the Greens mean by this kind of drug policy, that it's long term and that in the meantime they want a national commission, it's not unreasonable, but it's so easily made unreasonable in the mouths of people who have an interest in attacking them.
Yeah, I think I agree. I made this point on the show on Monday that lots of Green Party policy was set at a time when they were a party that was there for the cause that they wanted to put forward, rather than as necessarily somebody who was going to be winning 40, 50, potentially 60 seats at a future election. I mean, the sky really is the limit in the world we're living in at the moment. And the policy reflects that level of lack of necessity to be able to withstand scrutiny. So I think that there will, as you say, I think I would agree with you that there needs to be, first of all, good communications on this, but an understanding internally that when there's trying to be policy being set by the Green Party, it should be done not just in the understanding of what members want to see, but what they can best take to the public to try and win elections. I think that's something that Green Party members would be best to consider in future.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important to remember that when you're running a candidate in a by-election like this one, it's not just the candidate who's going to be scrutinised. Like, everything is going to be open for scrutiny, and you better have your account of what it is that you're doing pretty clear for the country, because the whole country watches these by-elections, not just the people in the constituency. You've got your whole account ready for the country, because that's what you need in order to bat away these attacks, but also to like make clear your own vision for when the next general election comes, right? These are all opportunities to let the country know who you are and therefore grow your support. And so yeah, that all needs to be clear. It needs to be done, guys.
100% agree with that. I also 100% agree with you about the 2024 intake of MPs. An absolute rabble, if I ever saw one. A motley crew, the motliest of motley crews.